Hello fellow egoists, just want to start the video by saying sorry for the poor audio quality today. Because of some hardware issues I can't use the microphone I typically use and so the sound quality goes down the drain too. But I hope you'll still be able to enjoy the video, in which we'll be looking at the possible new 11 of Bastard Munchen for the PXG match, along with what are the stakes for each character. With Bastard Munchen vs PXG incoming and the new character storylines being introduced, such as Kyorajin who will surely play and Ness coming back into the story, we can wonder what will become of Bastard's starter lineup. Now for the general structure of the video, we'll be working from the strikers down to the goalie and looking at what each formation can give us. Let's start by putting the basis of our analysis into play. The first is that Bastard constantly worked in a 4-4-2 diamond. The second thing is that Noash never changed this formation, even going as far as putting himself in the right back position instead of changing the formation a bit, even though he could go into a much more defensive one such as a 4-5-1. And for our last point, Bastard Munchen is a team that works by numbers. The philosophy of hyper-rationality isn't about logic per se in that sense. The idea is that Bastard Munchen follows whatever path leads to the most goals, no matter if it's the best one or not. As long as a path to goal works and that it can be fully explained, then it is a valid one, which is why Blue Lock was able to infiltrate the team, and generally the players aren't restricting themselves to positional play and are using a style based on what's best at the moment, using their own individuality. This topic in general deserves its own video, but the main takeaway that I want you to have is that Bastard Munchen chooses its players based on their feats and numbers, which will be the most important thing, as we'll make our biggest prediction yet. With this we can finally get into the meat of things, starting from the strikers. Of course, for the left striker we'll have Kaiser, the Naked Emperor. While he did get beat by Isagi in the Ubers match, Kaiser has been a constantly good striker for the whole of the NL, scoring 3 goals in 3 matches along with multiple defensive feats, even if some were actually directed against his team. This, along with his raw numbers, make him an undeniable choice for the role of left striker in the team. Now in terms of actual character arc, what can we expect out of him? For this we have to look at his goals in the NL, but also his current situation. Kaiser's goal for the PXG match is obviously to devour Isagi to get back his honor and pride. By going into this direction, Kaiser has been able to develop a new weapon to beat Isagi. While not much is known about said weapon, for now we can theorize a bit of things. The important part to notice first is that the scene in which Kaiser develops his new weapon is actually a sort of callback to how Isagi developed his lefty shot to beat Isagi, showing once again how similar they are. The second thing is that Isagi developed his lefty shot because he had a vision that was better than Kaiser with the ecocentrism piece, but still he still lacked in finishing, in which Kaiser was just leagues above him. Since the roles are now reversed, we can expect the stakes of the piece to be reversed too. So the new piece for Kaiser would actually be a playmaking piece, as after all he got beat by Isagi in this exact department in the Ubers match for the final goal of the match with Isagi's genius run. Though does this mean that Kaiser will dominate the field with this new piece? I don't think so, but the reason is kept for another time. Now for the right striker we actually have 2 options. Of course Kunigami could be here, but we could actually expect Isagi to take his place instead. The idea behind that is pretty easy. In chapter 241 we have seen how Isagi and Kaiser were said to have potential to become a great striker duo, so with this in mind and the idea of Bastard Munchen being a double axis offense, Isagi would be a perfect choice. Another thing to take into account is that during the Ubers match, Isagi was rated at 88 overall along with a 94 in offense, whereas Kunigami was just slightly above with 91 overall and similar 94 offense, but because of his lackluster match compared to his past performances, and along with Isagi's insane dominance during the Ubers match, we can for sure expect Isagi to surpass Kunigami in stats overall and also offense, thereby making him a more than suitable enough striker even if we talk in terms of raw stats. As for Isagi's storyline, we currently have his desire to be the number 1 of Blue Lock by beating both Kaiser and Rin as a striker, meaning that he will have to outscore them, which I'll make a video about because this is actually really interesting. While we haven't gotten much about Isagi's future development actually as his character for the PXG match, it has been clear from Hiyori's storyline that Isagi is on his way to develop his talent further, and this will surely come in the form of his senses finally being unlocked, which I talked about in a past video of mine, and I highly recommend watching it, even if there are a bit of things to update with this. Now onto the midfield. For the role of offensive midfielder we have 2 pretty rough choices to make, being of course Hiyori or Ness. The important thing is that Hiyori has proven himself as the undeniable better midfielder currently with his use of metavision and great football IQ. Though you could argue that his passing and dribbling are still below Ness's, but he maximizes them thanks to metavision, which improves his vision and decision making, thereby making his dribbling and passing more effective than Ness. Though if we go purely by stats, Ness should still have the better stats, and an important thing is that Hiyori has shown more defensive feats than Ness, with Ness being totally useless in that department in the Ubers match. So with all this, we can go into the idea that Ness will stay as an offensive midfielder and Hiyori as a defensive midfielder, since this would make the greatest use of Hiyori's vision to intercept passes, along with the fact that he would make a great pivot from defense to offense, and Ness would make a much better purely offensive player. As for their respective storylines, for Hiyori his storyline will of course be directly linked to Karasu, and especially in the midfield face-off between the newly awakened prodigy and the Kura but as a standalone character. Hiyori has pretty much fully awakened, and I don't expect much out of him. Though for Ness, it's much more interesting. With his backstory being revealed and the way he has been shown to us, with the newest characterization he has gotten, we can actually expect him to betray Kaiser and ally himself with Isagi, which would make him awaken the same way it did for Hiyori. But that's something kept for another video, though I did talk about it back in a chapter review which I'll put on the video. Now onto the side midfielders. Of course, since we've put Isagi into the right striker position, the only suitable option for the missing role of my right midfielder right now would be Kunigami. While he has shown some great offensive capabilities in his off-the-ball movement and in the hole of the nail, he also lacks a certain amount of goal-scoring ability, which doesn't make him more suitable for a role of striker currently than Isagi. But because of his high stats, we could still expect him to be on the field, and another reason for this choice is that Kunigami's storyline involves him fighting off Shido, and surely awakening thanks to this. And what is Kunigami's evolution, which we have already gotten a hint about back in the first selection? A left leg knuckleball technique. So with Kunigami being a bit deeper into the field, he would actually be able to have the range to pull off this technique again in the PXG match, while probably having Shido pressing him, since he would be placing in the midfield. As for the left midfielder replacing Grim, I could see our dear 1v1 Emperor taking the stage. The thought behind this is pretty simple. Yukimiya in the role of left wing back has actually been unable to do much, and this is totally normal. The general idea is that Yukimiya is a specialized dribbler who relies on his athleticism to get past people via brute acceleration and less refined ball control than the legs of Bachira or Ness. So in this position of left wing back, Yukimiya didn't necessarily have the space needed to show off his greatest asset. So by putting Yuki into this position, his dribbling could be shown off, along with more chances to use his gyro shot. Though the most important part of why I put Yukimiya in this position is that we have gotten one person who could fulfill his role as a left back, the enigmatic Kiora Jin. Not much is known about the style of play of our dear emo breakdancer, but we do know that he was directly compared to Corona and was normally about to be put in the position of right back. So by putting Kiora into the position of left back, it would easily fit with this sentence where he was compared to Corona. And also the fact that Kiora would be on the left and so have an easier time to use his dominant right leg. And since we've already talked about him, we can also expect Corona to be put in the position of left back with his great link-up capabilities and ability to perfectly assist players. So we could see a Hiyori and Corona duo similar to the Hiyori and Karasu link-up we saw back in the U20 match, with Karasu moving in to create space for Hiyori to use his passing abilities, which could also be linked to the fact that we saw Corona's color on the cover of Hiyori and his chain. And of course that the positions are basically the same. The big problem of this formation is that Corona kind of sucks in defense, and similarly Kiora doesn't have the best of defensive stats, and so as to boost this, we will put the two defensive goats of Blue Lock in the center back position, the Team Z duo of Raichi and Igaguri. For Raichi, this is pretty obvious. He has gotten great defensive feats in the Ubers match by constantly winning his duels or at least keeping people at bay, which I talked about more in my chapter analysis series. And for Igaguri, it's more so related to the fact that back in the Team Z match, he was best used as a defender, along with the fact that he was obviously going to play with how much attention he has been gotten throughout the nail. As for his storyline, we could expect him to use Militia against Shido, and by doing so caging our newly awakened demon. And finally, to finish it off, of course, the god of defense, the one true goat of them all, Gagamaru at your service for the role of goalkeeper. And with this, we've finished the formation. I hope you enjoyed the video and that the sound quality wasn't bad enough that it raped your ears for the entire duration of the video. And with all that said, I'll leave you there. Have a great one, fellow egoists.